I never thought I'd stand frozen on my best friend's doorstep, staring at his mom like I just walked into the wrong life. But that's exactly what happened that evening. I'm Ethan, 24, studying economics at the university and working part-time delivering food just to keep my head above water. It's a weird place to be. Old enough to feel the pressure of life. Young enough to still be treated like you don't know anything. I live in a big city, one of those places where you can be surrounded by thousands of people and still feel invisible. Every day blends into the next. Lectures, deliveries, bills, and not much else. Alex, my best friend since high school, has always been the opposite of me. Cheerful, laid back, always joking about how I'm twice our age in attitude. He's the kind of guy who floats through life like it's a game. And I guess that's why we stayed close all these years. He pulls me up. I keep him grounded. That night, I got a delivery ticket that made me laugh. Alex had ordered again. He does that sometimes just so I'll drop by and hang out. I didn't even check the order. I just rode over, knowing the route by heart. When I rang the bell, I expected Alex to answer with some dumb comment and that usual smirk. But the door opened and it wasn't him. It was her, Sophia, his mom. And nothing about that moment was ordinary. She had just come back from a workout. Tight black leggings, a fitted zip-up athletic top, hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. Her skin glowed like she'd just showered. She looked confident, calm, and absolutely not like someone's mom was supposed to look. Not to me, at least. "Oh," she said, pausing for just a beat when she saw me. "Ethan, right?" I nodded a little slower than I meant to. Yeah, delivery." She smiled. The kind that wasn't just polite, it was present, focused. "Come in. Alex is not home yet, but you can leave it in the kitchen." I stepped in. Their place was neat, bright, smelled faintly like citrus and lavender. I'd been there 100 times before, but somehow it felt different, like I'd never actually looked. She led the way, and I followed, awkwardly holding the bag of food like a shield. She moved with that kind of grace that comes from knowing exactly who you are. Not showy, not trying, just comfortable in her skin. And it hit me harder than I expected. "Busy night?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. I shrugged. "Usual city's always hungry." She laughed, soft but rich. "I admire that. You study and work at the same time?" "Yeah, not really a choice," I said, setting the bag down on the counter. "That kind of discipline at your age is rare," she said, leaning against the counter across from me. "Most guys I know at 24 are still trying to figure out how to separate laundry." I smiled, then froze a little because the way she was looking at me, it wasn't inappropriate, but it was full, curious, like she was actually seeing me. "You look too mature for your age," she said casually, eyes steady on mine. I blinked, not sure if I heard her right. Then I said the first thing that came to mind, "And you look too young for yours." There was a pause, a shift, like the room had suddenly gone quieter, heavier. She tilted her head, her smile lingering, but something behind her eyes changed. I didn't move, neither did she. We just stayed like that for a second too long. The door banged open. "Yo, food guy." Alex's voice cut through the moment like a knife. I stepped back instinctively, laughing it off. Sophia straightened up and turned toward him as he entered. "He brought your dinner, but don't forget to thank him." Alex clapped me on the back, completely unaware of anything. "You're the best, man." I mumbled something back, trying not to look at her as I left, but I could still feel her gaze on my back. Still feel the quiet in the room from a moment that shouldn't have meant anything, but did. On the ride home, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Something had shifted. I didn't know what exactly or what it meant, but I felt it. And deep down, I knew this wasn't going to be just another dinner delivery. The next time I saw Sophia, I wasn't delivering food. I was just stopping by to hang out with Alex like we used to. Nothing special. At least that's what I told myself. He had invited me over to play some game he just downloaded. But the moment I walked through the front door and saw her in the kitchen, something shifted inside me again. It was subtle. She was just rinsing off a coffee mug, wearing a simple navy blouse and jeans. But the air felt charged the second our eyes met. "Ethan," she said, smiling as she turned off the tap. "Nice to see you again." You too, I said, trying to keep my tone casual. Didn't know you'd be home. Law office is closed today. I'm catching up on some reading and coffee, she said, lifting the mug. Alex shouted from his room upstairs. Dude, I'm loading up the match. I'll be there in a sec. I called back, then glanced at Sophia. I guess I better go before he starts yelling. She laughed. You two still game like you're 15? Some things never change. She leaned against the counter. What has changed? I paused, a little thrown. What do you mean? She shrugged lightly. You're not the same kid I used to see around here. You carry yourself differently, more grounded. You've always been polite, but now you look like someone who has too much on his plate and not enough time to complain about it. That caught me off guard. No one had ever said anything like that to me. I scratched the back of my neck. Well, life kind of pushes you that way, I guess. And you're still in school? Yeah, last year of economics. Deliver food between classes to stay afloat. Not glamorous, but she nodded, clearly impressed. That's more than a lot of people your age are doing. You should be proud of that. I looked at her, wondering if she meant it or it was just being kind. But there was no patronizing tone. No pity in her voice, just interest. Real interest. And it felt good. Too good. I shifted slightly. And you still winning courtroom battles? She smiled, trying to, though some days it's more like surviving meetings and dodging politics. I leaned on the door frame, feeling a little more relaxed now. You make it look easy. It's not, she said simply. But thank you. There was a moment of quiet after that. Not awkward, just a stillness. A soft current moving under the surface. Her eyes met mine again, and this time it felt closer, like the space between us had shrunk without either of us moving. You know, she said, tilting her head slightly, you look too mature for your age. The line echoed in my mind. She had said it before that first evening. This time, though, it hung heavier in the air like it meant more. I smiled, leaning into it a little, and you still look too young for yours. She smiled wider, her eyes narrowing just a bit, like she was reading into it. That moment right there, it didn't feel like banter. Felt like a quiet challenge. Another second passed. No one said anything. Then Alex called again, louder this time. The bubble burst. I cleared my throat and gave her a quick nod. Duty calls. She chuckled softly. Don't let him destroy your high score. I laughed acidus. I stepped into the hallway. But the moment lingered, even upstairs with Alex animatedly explaining game strategies and shouting at the screen. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her voice, her eyes, that small but undeniable shift in how we talked. It wasn't flirtation, not exactly. It was something softer, slower, like two people cautiously noticing each other in a new light. The rest of the evening went as usual. Pizza, games, banter, but I wasn't fully there. Later, when I left and walked out into the cool night, I caught a glimpse of her again through the front window. She was sitting on the couch reading, legs folded under her, completely at ease. She didn't look up, but I still saw her, and I knew I'd carry that image with me longer than I should. It started small, a few unexpected run-ins, a glance that lasted a beat too long. But the more it happened, the more I couldn't tell myself it was just coincidence. The first time was in the courtyard between their building wings. I was locking my bike, heading up to Alex's place again, when I looked up and saw her. Sophia coming down the front steps in a beige trench coat and heels, coffee in hand. She looked sharp, like she was heading into battle with the world. And I guess she kind of was. Her stride had that calm precision. But when she spotted me, she actually stopped. Ethan, she said with a half smile. Twice in 1 week. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. Just passing through, delivering wisdom to your son. She laughed. I doubt he'd accept it, but you're welcome to try. We only talked for a minute. Something casual about school, weather, the usual. But her tone was softer now. There was a kind of familiarity in it. She asked questions, not just how's school, but what's your endgame? And do you see yourself staying in the city after graduation? Like she actually wanted to know, and it threw me a little because I didn't have good answers. I remember fumbling out something vague about maybe grad school and if the money works out. She nodded like she understood that kind of hustle. Then right before stepping into her car, she paused and said, You've got a good head on your shoulders. Don't let this city wear it down. That stuck with me. It would have been enough on its own, but then came the second time, a local cafe. I had ducked in between deliveries, just grabbing a quick coffee and trying to stay awake through midterms. And there she was again, sitting near the window, laptop open, blazer draped over the back of the chair. I almost didn't recognize her without the courtroom polish. She looked more relaxed, casual even. When she saw me, she smiled, and not the polite kind. This one was wide, immediate, like she was genuinely glad to see me. "You're following me now?" she teased. I held up my phone, blamed the algorithm. She waved me over, and to my own surprise, I joined her. We sat for 10, maybe 15 minutes. Nothing dramatic. She asked how exams were going. I asked about a case she'd mentioned last time, but again, it was the way she looked at me, like I wasn't just Alex's friend or the delivery guy anymore, like I was something else, or at least someone she didn't mind seeing. And then came the third time, probably the one that messed with my head the most. Late afternoon, I was walking past their place. No reason in particular. And I saw her sitting on the porch, glass of something chilled in her hand, sun just dipping low. She waved me over with a quiet smile. I hesitated, every voice in my head telling me this was a bad idea. But I went. "Long day?" I asked, leaning against the porch rail. "Always," she said. "But this helps." We talked about nothing, TV shows, books, how both of us hate small talk, but somehow ended up making it. Her tone was different again, softer, slower. She didn't glance at her phone once. She just looked at me, listened, and then without warning, she reached out and placed her hand briefly on mine. It wasn't much, just a touch, barely a second, but it was deliberate. She didn't explain it. Neither did I. I think we both knew what it meant. A few minutes later, she said quietly, "I haven't felt this kind of connection in a long time." I didn't know what to say at first. My throat went dry, but then I nodded and said, "Me too." That wasn't a line. It was the truth. We sat there until the sun dropped completely. Then I said I should go. She didn't ask me to stay. I didn't expect her to. But that night, lying in my small apartment bed, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Porch light in her hair, wine glass in hand, the weight in her eyes. I didn't know what this was or what I was walking into, but I knew it wasn't nothing. Not anymore. It wasn't planned, at least not by me. Alex had asked me to come over that Friday evening. Something about helping him rearrange his room or figuring out why his laptop kept crashing. I said, sure. I had no deliveries that night and needed the distraction. But when I rang the bell, it was Sophia who opened the door again, and she was alone. "Oh," she said, stepping aside. "Alex stuck at work. He texted about an hour ago. Said he's pulling a double shift." I hesitated in the doorway. "I didn't see any messages." She shrugged. "He probably forgot to tell you. You're here now, though. Come in." Her tone was casual, like it wasn't a big deal. But something about the way she looked at me, like she already knew I'd say yes, made my heart kick a little. I stepped inside. She led me into the kitchen where a half-open bottle of wine sat on the counter. 2 glasses, one already half full. "You drink red?" she asked, lifting the bottle. "Sometimes," I said. She poured. We sat in the living room. No music, no TV, just the clink of the wine glass. When I set it down in the quiet rhythm of conversation, at first we talked about safe things, work, school, how I felt like I was running out of steam near the finish line. She asked questions in that way. She had attentive, curious, but never pushy. Then she shifted the spotlight. "My ex-husband hated silence," she said. "He always had music playing or the TV on in the background. I never understood why. Maybe he was afraid of it," I said, not really thinking. She looked at me for a second longer than necessary. "Maybe." She took a sip of wine. Her eyes didn't leave mine. "I was married for almost 12 years, she said. "He was ambitious, smart, the kind of guy who knew how to win a room." I didn't say anything, just waited. But eventually he stopped being curious about me. That's what I remember most. Not the arguments or the distance, just that he stopped asking questions. I nodded slowly. "That sounds lonely." She tilted her head. "It was. There was a pause. Then I said, "You don't seem lonely now." She smiled a little sad. "That's because you're here." The room got quiet again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of things not being said. I looked down at my glass. I've never really been in a serious relationship. Too much going on. Or maybe I just never met someone who made the chaos feel worth it. "That'll change," she said softly. "You have a kind heart. People like that, they get noticed even if it takes time." I looked at her and she looked back. It wasn't flirting. It wasn't even something I could name, but it was real. Her fingers brushed against mine when she reached for her glass again. I didn't move. Neither did she. And then her hands stayed there, just lightly touching mine, like she was giving me a choice. I turned my palm over, wrapped my fingers around hers. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. Then slowly, deliberately, I leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a firework kind of kiss. It was soft, searching, like we were both afraid it might break something we couldn't fix. But she didn't pull away. She leaned in too, deepening it just enough to make it clear she wasn't hesitating. When we finally parted, her eyes were glassy. She took a breath, then whispered, "This is dangerous." "I know," I said, "but I don't want to stop." I didn't either. That moment, it felt like crossing a line we both saw coming, but didn't know how close we'd gotten until it was behind us. We stayed there, hands still clasped, knees brushing, like neither of us wanted to break the stillness. It wasn't passion. Not yet. It was trust. Something deeper and more terrifying. Later, when I got home, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Everything was the same, but nothing felt the same. I kissed my best friend's mother, and she kissed me back. Not like a mistake, but like something she'd been waiting to do. The next time I went over, it wasn't because of Alex. She had texted me, just a short message. "If you're free tonight, I made too much food." I must have read it 3 times. No emoji, no playful tone. Just that quiet invitation wrapped in something that felt like more. I didn't even hesitate, just sent back, "I'll be there." When I showed up, the house was dimly lit, warm, smelled like rosemary and garlic. Sophia answered the door barefoot, wearing a simple black dress that clung to her just enough to make my throat tighten. Not revealing, not dramatic, but it made me forget my own name for a second. "You made it," she said with a soft smile, stepping aside. Would have been rude to turn down dinner. The table was already set for 2. Candles, real ones, not the battery kind. Soft music played in the background. Something jazzy and slow. I'd never seen the place feel this way, like it wasn't just a house anymore, but a space that held a kind of quiet electricity between the walls. We ate slowly, talking about nothing urgent. She told me about her week, client meetings, a court delay, her frustration with a judge who interrupted too much. I told her about a professor who gave me a backhanded compliment on my paper. She laughed and called him a relic in a blazer, but the rhythm between us wasn't the same as before. It was closer. Near the end of dinner, she reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Not tentative at fave, just steady, like she was reminding me it was okay to feel what we were both clearly feeling. I looked at her. Her eyes held that same mix of confidence and vulnerability I was starting to crave. And then I leaned forward and kissed her again. This time slower, longer. She responded immediately, not rushing, not pulling away. When we stood, she didn't say a word, just led me into the living room. We sat close on the couch, her knee brushing mine, our hands finding each other again like they already knew the way. The candles flickered gently on the walls, painting shadows on her collarbone. I noticed the way she tilted her head slightly when I touched her cheek. The small breath she let out when my fingers traced her arm. It was quiet, honest, careful, but not hesitant. She leaned into me, her voice just above a whisper. I told myself this wouldn't happen. I didn't move. And now she looked at me, her lips barely parted. Now I don't want to pretend it isn't already happening. She kissed me this time firmly with purpose. Her fingers slid up into my hair as I pulled her closer, the warmth between us rising like something we'd both been holding back for too long. We didn't rush. It wasn't clumsy or wild. It was slow, tender. A series of moments that said more than words could. The couch turned into a place we didn't leave for a long time. Hands roaming carefully. Bodies leaning together like we'd both found something we hadn't realized we were missing. Her whispers were soft against my ear. Her touch confident but thoughtful. At one point, she pulled back just enough to look at me. Her eyes searched mine for something. A question, maybe a boundary. Then she said quietly, "Just tonight." But all of me. I didn't answer with words. I just held her closer. The room faded. Time melted. There was no clock, no city, no Alex, just us. When I woke the next morning, the sun had barely begun to light the edges of the living room. I was still on the couch, my arm draped around her. She was curled against me, the blanket halfway slipping off her shoulder, her breathing steady and calm. We hadn't talked about what would happen after, but in that quiet morning haze, I knew things couldn't go back to what they were. She stirred, opened her eyes slowly, and looked at me without saying a word. Everything between us had changed, and we both knew it. After that night, everything felt different, but not in the way I expected. There was no grand conversation, no defining label, no dramatic promises, just a quiet understanding, a shift. She texted me the next day, "Thank you for last night." It meant more than I can explain. I stared at that message for longer than I care to admit. Not because I didn't know how to respond, but because I felt the same way. From then on, it became something we never named, but always knew how to find. When Alex was out working or with friends, I'd stop by. Sometimes just for a coffee, other times for an hour on the porch that turned into her hand slipping into mine. We didn't make plans, didn't say next time, but we always knew when it was time. She started leaving the side gate unlocked. I started walking over without knocking. We found this rhythm. Quiet, careful, secret. Her smile would soften the second I stepped inside. My stress from the day would melt the moment she touched my arm. It didn't take long before it stopped feeling strange. It just felt right. We didn't always end up in each other's arms. Some nights we just talked about her life, about mine, about nothing. She told me how she used to dream of becoming a writer, how law school was a compromise that became a lifestyle. I told her how economics was never my passion, but it made sense, and sometimes that's enough. One evening, as we sat close on the kitchen floor finishing wine from the bottle, because neither of us wanted to go upstairs, she looked at me and said, "You make me feel alive again." I didn't answer right away. I just ran my fingers through her hair, watching the way her eyes closed for a second, like she didn't want to lose the moment. Eventually, I whispered, "And you make me feel like I finally know who I am." That night, she led me to her bedroom for the first time. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't wild. It was slow, tender, familiar, like we'd been moving toward that moment since the first time she opened the door. The bedroom was dim, quiet, filled with soft light from a candle on her dresser. She kissed me like she already knew every part of me. Her hands traced my shoulders, my young, moving with the kind of intention that left no space for doubt. My nervousness dissolved with every quiet breath she let out. There was no rush to anything. Just touch, just warmth, just the kind of closeness that feels like shelter. She whispered to me in the dark, "You make me feel like a woman again." I pulled her close, lips brushing her cheek. "And you make me feel like a man." Afterward, we stayed tangled under the sheets, her head resting on my chest. The silence wasn't awkward. It was full, like it held everything we didn't have to say out loud. That was the night I stopped thinking this was accidental. It wasn't just comfort anymore. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper. I'd see her smile when I arrived, feel the way her hands slipped around mine like it had always been there, the way she'd lean in, whisper something close, and I'd feel the words in my chest more than my ears. She gave me her time, her softness, her stories. I gave her attention, care, and the kind of admiration she didn't ask for. But I think she needed. We met wherever Alex wasn't. On quiet evenings when he was working late. On slow Sunday mornings when he'd sleep over at a friend's place. Once I even showed up while he was out for groceries. She pulled me into the hallway and kissed me like we only had minutes to exist. We lived in the in-between, and for a while that was enough. But deep down I knew it couldn't stay hidden forever. We were getting too close, too visible, too real. Still, every time I left, I'd pause at the door, turn to look at her one more time, and every time her eyes told me the same thing. She didn't want this to end, and neither did I. Things were good. Too good, maybe. We gotten used to sneaking around, careful glances, quick texts, timing things just right so Alex never caught on. I guess we thought we were being smart, but secrets don't stay quiet forever. Not when you're playing this close to someone's home. Started small. Just a few questions from Alex. Dude, why are you always free to come over like randomly, or you were here yesterday? Right? My mom said someone left their hoodie. I brushed it off, said I had a light week at school, or made some joke about his mom being more organized than we were. He never pressed too hard, but I could feel it. The easy rhythm we had was starting to shift. I'd walk in and catch Sophia giving me a look that meant, "Be careful." Her text got shorter, more cautious. One night, the three of us were sitting at the dinner table, Alex, Sophia, and me. After she made some roasted chicken and salad, Alex was telling a story about work, some customer who tried to pay in change. I was laughing at the right parts, trying to stay normal, but I felt her leg brush mine under the table. Not in a bold way, just a soft, steady touch that only I noticed. That tiny contact lit my nerves on fire. I looked over without meaning to, just a glance, but it was enough. Alex caught it. He didn't say anything right away, just paused mid-bite like something had clicked in the back of his mind. Then he looked down like he wasn't sure what to do with the thought. After dinner, he pulled me aside near the hallway. "You come around a lot these days," he said, not smiling. "More than usual." I tried to laugh it off. "We're friends. That's what we do, right?" He nodded slowly. "Sure. Just seems like you're more interested in being here when I'm not." That hit harder than I expected. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Just gave him a shrug like it didn't mean anything. But it did. That night, Sophia texted me just 2 words. "He suspects." I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the screen, not knowing what to type back. Eventually, I replied, "I can't stop." She didn't answer right away, but 2 nights later, I was at her door again. No words were needed. Her eyes said it all, tired, worried, but still full of that same pull that had brought us together in the first place. She stepped aside, let me in, and I kissed her before we even reached the hallway. It was different this time. Faster, needier, like we both knew the clock was ticking. Like the risk only made the wanting stronger. In her room, the urgency melted into something more desperate. Her hands clung to me like she didn't want to let go. I moved slower, trying to memorize every curve of her back, every sigh that slipped from her lips. She whispered things I won't repeat, things meant only for me, things that made me feel like I was more than just a young man in her life. Afterward, we lay there, her head on my chest, both of us breathing slow but not calm. "I hate this," she murmured. "The hiding, the guilt." I didn't answer right away because I felt it too. And worse, I was starting to wonder if Alex already knew more than he let on. He'd been quieter lately, less playful, more watchful. We were on borrowed time, but every time I thought about ending it, I'd remember how she looked at me when we were alone, how she listened like no one ever had, how her touch made me feel more like Ethan than I ever had in all my years of pretending to be someone I wasn't. So, I stayed even when I knew it was dangerous. Even when I knew it could all fall apart because I'd rather live with the risk than lose the only thing in my life that felt completely real. It had to end. We both knew it. But knowing something doesn't make it easier to accept. She told me on a Tuesday I was sitting on the couch in her living room. Same spot I'd sat a dozen times before. Same quiet between us. Only this time there was something different in the way she looked at me. Her eyes were softer, slower, but not in a good way. It was the kind of softness that comes right before something breaks. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "We have to stop." I didn't say anything. Couldn't. The words hit like a weight to the chest. "It's not that I don't care," she continued barely above a whisper. "You know I do, but this isn't sustainable. It's not fair to you or Alex. And honestly, it's not fair to me anymore either." I looked down at my hands, gripping my knees like they'd hold me together. Just like that, she gave me a sad smile. Not just like that. This whatever this is, it's meant something, but it can't be forever. I swallowed hard, throat tight. Then give me one more night. She hesitated, then nodded. No ceremony, no drama, just a quiet, wordless agreement. That night was different from the others. No tension, no rush, no fear of being caught. It felt like we'd both let go of the pretending. We knew it was the last time, and that made everything slower, deeper, quieter. She cooked a simple dinner. Pasta, salad, wine. We barely ate. Mostly, we talked about things we hadn't dared to before. She told me about the first time she noticed me, not just as Alex's friend, but as a man. I told her about how I kept replaying our first real conversation in my head, like it had been the start of something I hadn't understood back then. After dinner, we moved to the bedroom. No rush, no need to impress or chase anything. She undressed slowly, calmly, like she was letting down a shield she no longer needed. I followed her lead, and when we lay down, everything between us felt softer. Her fingers brushed along my jaw, my chest, my shoulder, touches full of memory. Her lips met mine like they were saying goodbye in a language neither of us had words for. It wasn't lust. It was gratitude connection. The kind that stays under your skin long after the moment is gone. Afterward, we lay tangled together, not saying much. Her hand rested on my chest, fingers absent-mindedly tracing the shape of my collarbone. I don't regret a single moment, she whispered. I turned my head and kissed her forehead. Neither do I. There were no tears, just silence, heavy and still. When I left, the sun was just beginning to rise. The city was quiet, washed in early light. I walked home without music, without looking at my phone. I didn't want to break the spell just yet. I didn't see her after that. Not in the same way. We passed each other a couple of times in the building. Polite smiles, quiet nods, like we'd gone back to being who we were before. Only we hadn't. She'd gone back to her life, and I tried to return to mine. But the truth is, something stayed with me. Her voice, her laugh, the way she once looked at me, like I was more than just some kid in her kitchen. People always think stories like this are scandals, but it wasn't one. It was a lesson, a moment, a part of my life I don't talk about but never really left behind. I don't regret it. I carry it with me quietly, privately, like a bookmark in a chapter that shaped me in ways I'm still understanding. And that's enough. What does it mean to find a connection so real it redefines you? Yet know it must end. As you immerse yourself in Ethan and Sophia's story, ask yourself, when have you felt truly seen? Not just for who you are, but for who you could become. Their tale, woven with quiet glances and stolen moments, invites us to explore a profound truth. The most transformative experiences often bloom in the spaces we least expect, fragile yet unforgettable. What can we learn from their whispered intimacy, their choice to embrace something fleeting despite its risks? Doesn't it challenge us to consider how we balance desire with duty in our own lives? Ethan, caught in the grind of city life, finds in Sophia not just attraction, but a mirror to his own unspoken yearnings. Her words, just tonight, but all of me, capture a raw honesty. True connection demands vulnerability, even when it's temporary. Their story, laden with secrecy, guilt, and inevitable closure, teaches us that life's deepest lessons often come from moments we can't keep, but that shape us forever. The pain of their goodbye, soft and deliberate, mirrors our own encounters with fleeting beauty. Haven't we all held on to something we knew couldn't last, yet found meaning in its impermanence? Their bond, though hidden, reminds us that authenticity, even in the shadows, can illuminate who we are. Reflect on a moment when you felt fully alive despite knowing it couldn't endure. What did it teach you about yourself? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might resonate with someone else's heart. If this tale stirred something in you, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Let's keep uncovering the lessons that make us human.